Thanks for tuning in to the Conchs, a Bring Joy podcast. I'm your host, Joy Newlish. I'm a first-generation Conch raised by a fourth. What does that add up to? A whole lot of Conch pride. And that's what this show is all about, celebrating the incredible people of Key West and their stories from every corner of our Conch community. So sit back and relax, cuz. Let's do this thing. Big shout out to Marissa Redding and Patty McLaughlin for supporting the show and keeping Conch pride alive. How we doing, Conch fans? I got a good one for you today. We're talking with true Conch, a Conch legend, Richie Garcia, 30 years in professional baseball as a major league umpire. I'm so excited. I invited my friend Victor Gallardo, another Conch legend, to join us in the conversation. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Welcome, Joy. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. This is a dream since I started this podcast about a year ago, and I started making a list of who I wanted to be on the show, and you've been at the top of the list. So you're making my dreams come true today.
Well, I'm happy to be able to do that. You're more than welcome, and I'm open for whatever you want to know.
All right, that sounds good. You're a Conch. You were born and raised here on the island. I want to start talking about Key West. Let's take a ride down memory lane. What was Key West like when you were growing up as a kid?
Key West was paradise when I was growing up. I tell my wife all the time, my grandmother used to go out and buy fruit at the store every day, fresh fruit. I get home from school and I sit in the porch and eat my plums, and we had some Spanish limes, apples, oranges, something different every day, grapes. I started out going to Mary Immaculate, which was very close to my house. My grandmother would walk me to school almost every day. I went to school every day except during the World Series. Never went to school during the World Series. Never. And some days I went half a day and that was it. If I couldn't get out, if I couldn't sneak out at a half a day, I wouldn't go at all. And fortunately for me, my mom and dad were fine with that. They never said, no, don't go. Obviously, I grew up being a baseball fan. I think coming out of the womb, I think I was, that's all we ever did. We played baseball every day. We'd find some kind of lot where we could play, and we played.
Victor, you can relate to that, huh?
Absolutely. As you know, I in my podcast with you, Joy, I talked a lot about playing stick ball with Richie and Louis Pazzo, and the boys. And I actually had Wayne Garcia do that really impressive carving at Adela's house there on Duval Street of us playing stick ball in a lot.
Yeah, and corkball. Used to play
corkball,
play corkball. We used to tape the cork and flip it with your middle finger, and we tried to hit it with a broomstick. That was fun. Those were fun. And I enjoyed my childhood there. I loved it. I love Key West. As a matter of fact, a couple months ago, actually, it was, let's see, when was it? Around October. Two of my granddaughters were playing soccer in Miami. They came down from Nashville. They go to school in Nashville at Lipscomb. And they played University of Miami, and they played FAU soccer. So we had a day in between. So we drove down to Key West, my daughter, my wife, and I, and one of the other granddaughters, the younger one, and my daughter, my youngest daughter, surprised me and got us a room where I was born and raised, 417 Amelia, which is the Douglas house right now, right by the Cuban Club. So
Wow.
she surprised me by telling my granddaughter, tell Papa you want to go see where he was born. So we went there and walked around, and the lady was showing us. Then all of a sudden the lady says, you want your key? And I'm like, key to what? She says, key to your room. You're staying here tonight. Oh my God, what a I could see my grandmother walking around. I could see the backyard. I told her, I said, I know you got a pool here, but this area here, there used to be a cistern back here. That's where we used to get our water. We, we didn't have a shower. All we had was a tub. My grandmother used to heat the water, but we loved it. Key West was Key West, and it was a paradise. We all grew up together. Everybody knew each other. Even after I got into baseball back in 1970, when I used to come home, um, I'd drive down to Wall Street and see all my friends. I didn't have to go. I didn't have to go to anybody's house. Just drive down to Wall Street. You see everybody. Go to a football game or go to a baseball game, or you just see everybody. And I still have a couple guys. Ordinary Fleetus lives like 10 minutes from my house here. He just moved here to Florida. He was living in Arizona. He just moved here. He's a scout for the Phillies, international scout, and he's always gone. I could never get. He calls me. He said, "I'm here for one day. I come back Monday. I'll come back Tuesday." And of all the times I've talked to him on the phone, we've been to lunch once. So my wife hasn't even met his wife yet. So it's like we got to get together. And of course, I keep in touch with Mingy Esconaldo. Him and I grew up together, went to school together. We were in every grade together. We were in every homeroom together. And so we're still friends. We're still big University of Miami fans. We talk about the games every after the game. We talk about the game and what they should have done, what they shouldn't have done, and just like the Conchs do.
And you mentioned University of Miami when I saw you back in December and introduced myself to you. You were speaking at George Meier's memorial. So you were good friends with him, and you grew up around that time. Maybe a little couple years older than him and Boog, but share some of those stories.
No, well, actually, Boog's a year older than we were. George and I are the same age.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I'm going to be 84 this month. So we're getting old.
Birthday.
And thank you. Yeah, George was part of our group. George, we were in class together. We used to tease George quite a bit. One story I always remember, we were at that middle school there. We rode our bikes to school. So Mingy and I were outside getting our bike, and we saw George's bike there. So we got his bike, put it in the bottom, and we piled up about 5 more bikes on top of his. So when he came out of there, we were hiding. We didn't want him to see us. We were hiding. We were laughing and laughing. And I think it took him about 2 weeks to find out who did it. Finally, when he cooled down, we let him know that we had done it. We didn't want to tell him when he was mad. You don't want to mess with George when he was mad.
I remember in your speech, you said that he was quite the competitor.
Oh, he was amazing. He was an amazing athlete to begin with. He never wanted to lose. He didn't want to lose. He played hard. Obviously, at his size, to be able to do what he did on the football field was amazing. So I was always so proud of him. And because of him, I think we became Miami fans, University of Miami fans, and followed him, followed his brother Joe, played there. And even through the bad times, we're still fans. And then, of course, they hit a streak there where everything was going good. And now I think we're going back to those days. I'm kind of enjoying the University of Miami a little bit more than I have in the past. So even in their basketball team now, they're doing a little bit better. I root for them and everything, any sport. I'm a sports fan. I watch whatever. I was in there the other day watching a game. I had a women's softball. My wife's shaking her head. You're watching women's softball? I said, yeah. They play pretty good now. They don't not like the old days, So, and they're making money. The college kids now, one of those girls from I want to say University of Oklahoma. I think she got signed for $1 million.
Yeah, yeah, Texas Tech.
A pitcher.
Yeah, Texas Tech. Kennedy, Nigel Kennedy makes $1 million. And now there's a professional league. So they're definitely very fun to watch, very fast game, very competitive, and some true athletes out there. In fact, the Lady Conchs have a really good team. The last several years, we've been very competitive and are in the regional tournament.
Tomorrow night, right?
Tomorrow night is it? Yeah, Tuesday night, depending on when you watch this. Tuesday night, there's a big game. You don't get home very often, but I know you were also home for dinner on the Diamond a few years back. And Victor, you had a question about that because you were also a keynote speaker.
Richie, you know, I was honored to be asked to be a keynote speaker at dinner on the Diamond, and to speak before those fans was an incredible feeling for me. I was so proud of that. How did you feel about doing that in front of the Key West fans?
Well, it was an awesome night. I was sick that weekend. Actually, I had been asked to come down, and I was just getting over COVID, and I called
Jackie
Probably
Niles?
Jack Niles.
Niles. Yes, Jack Niles. I called him. I said, "Hey, man, I'm sick. I can't. Can you change the date?" And he said, "You know what? I'd like to do it, but I already sold like 1,500 tickets, and this is like on Wednesday." So I said, "Well, I'll call you back. I'll see how I feel, the next couple of days." Well, I wasn't feeling any better, but I was feeling good enough that I could drive down, and I spent my whole time there in my room in bed. And only time I went out Saturday. I went over to the coffee shop over there across from Quicker's Field to see some of the old guys. And then I did visit the baseball team. They were practicing that day. I was there for about an hour. I watched the Super Bowl because the Super Bowl was on that Sunday. I watched the Super Bowl in bed. So the night I ended up being the last speaker, of course, because I was supposed to be the keynote speaker, and I was cold, I was chilly. I was honored to be there. Of course, and they had so many guys there. They had so many ex-players, and they had Brooks Carey was there. I believe Boog was there. Sam Holland was there. And I really, really enjoyed it. But I was sick, and I don't think I came across as good as I normally would have. But it was a great feeling to be there. It was a great feeling to have my wife there with me, and because she's not from Key West, so she got an idea about what Key West is all about. She's had to learn that the hard way, through me. So, so
It is an absolute honor when when you go back, when you get asked to talk about your days as a player and what it meant to you in front of, to me, what is the greatest fans in the world. I know that I spent many a night, Richie, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning in my house here in Atlanta, rehearsing my speech, going over it and over it and over it and over it and over. And my wife Sandy would say to me, "You think you got it down by now, or what?" And it was wonderful. So I'm
yeah.
glad you got to do it because
No, I've done it. I've done it, and I love doing it. I'm always they're never on time as far as telling you when they want you down there. They call you like 3 days before. They go, "Hey, can you come down and do this?" And I'm like, "When do you want me to do this?" Friday. It's
Yeah,
Wednesday.
yeah,
I can't, I just can't drop everything and just take off. And
right,
I mean,
right.
it's not that easy. Give me time. So that time they did give me a lot of time to prepare. And like I said,
Wonderful.
I normally don't prepare for talks because normally everything comes out pretty
Just add
easy.
it.
And a lot of my talks, what I do is I tell a couple stories or whatever. And then what I do is I open it up to questions, simply because when I do a talk, I'd like for the people that are listening to leave knowing more than they did before
Exactly.
I came on. especially about umpiring, umpires, how, what we go through, what we live, what we, all these little things that people, how we travel. We're on the road every 3 days, every 4 days, we're in a different city, that kind of stuff. They don't even realize it. People don't even realize that. And it's, I enjoy talking. I enjoy, you know, um, educating people about the game of baseball. That's my passion.
So that's a perfect segue to talk, because my next question was share your journey to becoming a professional umpire. Where did it start? So you say you didn't even go to school to watch the World Series. I agree. It should be a national holiday. Just
It
like
should
take
be,
2 weeks off, everybody. Right?
That's
especially
right.
well, especially now they play at night. These kids like myself, I wouldn't have been able to watch the World Series because by the time the games are over, it's midnight. All the advertising and all the, the whole thing that goes on. Um, well, just a little bit on the World Series. My dad and I drove from Key West to New York in 1954. I was 12 years old to go to the World Series. We saw the Giants and Cleveland 4-game series. It was a sweep. I saw Willie Mays make that catch in center field over
Oh, I've got the picture upstairs.
that. I was there. I saw that. I
Oh,
physic I
the catch.
physically Vic Wertz hit the ball. Um, and I remember as a kid I was a Yankee fan, so I was upset that Cleveland had beaten the Yankees because back then they didn't have playoffs. Whoever won, Cleveland won 111 games that year. The Yankees won 103. So they won 103 games and never got a chance to play in the postseason. So I got there. Al Lopez was the manager for Cleveland at the time. Al Lopez is a Tampa native here. So my dad said, let's go over there. Well, once you get an autograph, let him sign a ball for you. I said, no, I don't want to go. I don't like him. I don't like Cleveland. So he said, go over there. We're going to go over there and you're going to say, well, I have a picture on the wall here when I was 12 years old of Al Lopez signing that ball for me. Then I got a picture of me and Al Lopez at his 90th birthday in Tampa.
That's awesome.
My neighbor across, my neighbor, not now, but because I just moved, but I lived out in Clearwater Beach. And my neighbor across the street went to school with Al Lopez, was very good friends. So one day when he walked in my house and he saw the picture with Al Lopez, he said, can I take that picture and have him sign it? And I said, sure. So about 3 weeks later, he invited me to go to Al Lopez's 90th birthday, and we went. And I got to meet him again for the second time. And
What a full circle moment.
That's an
then
incredible moment.
then we went again in 1955. Saw the Yankees and the Dodgers, which will be remind me, that'll be one of my stories that I'm going to tell you before we hang up. Where the Dodgers beat the Yankees for the first time in a World Series. It was 1955. And Johnny Padres was I saw Jackie Robinson steal home plate. I know you guys have seen that picture with Yogi Berra holding the ball, yelling at the umpire because the umpire called him safe, and Yogi Berra was arguing with the umpire with the ball up in his hand.
Yeah.
So I also got to see Jackie Robinson play, which was
phenomenal.
was amazing.
Incredible history there, Joy.
Yeah,
Especially for two Yankee fans like us.
Exactly. I live my glory.
Well, you as an umpire, you lose that fanship. You're no longer a fan of anybody because it doesn't matter. Everybody yells at you. And believe it or not, the team that I had the biggest problem with my first year in baseball was the Yankee farm team, the Fort Lauderdale Yankees.
Pete Ward.
Yeah, Pete Ward was a manager. He was one of the managers. You know who else was a manager there? Bobby Cox, who just passed away. Bobby Cox was the manager there in 1971, Fort Lauderdale Yankees. Yep. So when I got home, I went in the Marine Corps right out of high school, 18 years old. I went right out in October of 1960. I went in the Marine Corps. Fortunately, I got to play baseball in the Marine Corps for 3 years. And we had some very, very, very good teams, very competitive teams, very good teams. I got offered a couple scholarships, University of North Carolina and Wilmington College, which at the time was a 2-year school. It was like a junior college at the time. Uh, now it's Wilmington College, University of North Carolina at Wilmington College. So it's a 4-year school now, and by the way, a very good baseball school still today. We used to play them quite a bit, because I was stationed at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. So we used to play those schools quite a bit. So the coach from Wilmington College took advantage of it. He got a lot of us guys that were getting out of the service to come play for him. So, but I went home and I got married. And back then you didn't go to school while you were married. If you got married, you had to go to work.
Right.
So that part, the playing part kind of, went out the window, I should say. So I coached Mary Immaculate High School
I didn't know that.
for 2
I mean,
years. Yes, I did. Had Randy Sterling. Randy Sterling was in the 7th grade. I got him to go to Mary Immaculate, and he pitched and beat Key West High School one year when we played them.
not
And
surprised at all.
no, I had a great time being coaching the kids. We didn't have a good team, but they learned how to play the game. Those kids learned how to play the game, and I had a great time. So what happened consequently doing that? My neighbor down the couple houses over was Vince Zito, was an umpire. He lived like 2 houses from me. So he came over one night and said, "Hey, I got a doubleheader at the Navy Yard, fast pitch softball. My partner got sick. Can you come out with me and stand on the bases for 2 games? You get paid, I don't know, $10, whatever it was." And I said, "Yeah, I'll go with you." I said, "But if I go, I want to work behind the plate." He said, "Well, you can't do that. You've never umpired before." I said, "I don't care. I want to get back there." He says, "No." I said, "Well, if I can't work the plate, I'm not going." Well, finally, I talked him into letting me, and that started. I loved it. I fell in love with it right then and there. It was like, I said, "You know what? I'm not coaching. I'm gonna stop coaching. I'm gonna start umpiring." So I did some little league games. I did some holy league games. Key West had a junior college, just getting started, just getting started. Bill Cates, I don't know if you guys remember Bill Cates and that,
Oh,
but
yeah.
Bill Cates was a legend in Key West.
Yeah.
Played
Field
the,
legend, sure.
yeah, he played in the Dodger organization for years. Never got to the big leagues, but he was in the minor leagues for quite a while. So I kind of worked my way in, and one day I worked a game at Wickers Field, the Key West Community College, whatever it was called at the time, against Miami-Dade North. Demi Maneri was the manager for Miami-Dade North. Well, in the first inning, I threw Bill Cates out of the game. So so in Key West, you don't do that. You don't throw you don't throw legends out of games. I didn't know that, but I did it. So so after the game, Demi Maneri came over and said, "Gee, you did a great job tonight." He said, "Do you ever think about umpiring professionally?" And I said, "No, no, I never have." He said, "Well, you should look into it." Because he said, anybody that can throw a Key West manager out of the game in the first inning has got guts enough to umpire professionally. So I said, well, I started looking into it, just a curiosity. You guys don't remember, but let me tell you, you know how we used to get the baseball scores in Key West? The Western Union ticker tape. It used to be they allowed me to go to the Cuban Club and keep score when I was 12, 13 years old. I was the only kid that was let go in there because there was gambling going on. There was guys playing pool for money. There was drinking. There were, everything that you don't want your son to be around. I was in there. I was there, but my main focus was that ticker tape and getting the scores out of that ticker tape and putting them up on the scoreboard because they had a big plastic scoreboard up, and I was the only one allowed. When I was there, I was the only one allowed to put the numbers up on the because there was a lot of gambling going on, and the guy didn't let anybody get near that ticker tape. So I, you know, baseball was everything. I mean, when all of a sudden we got teams in the Midwest, which was an hour behind us, Kansas City came in, and so my grandmother used to walk down to the Cuban club and call me, "Come on, you got to go to bed. You got to go to school tomorrow." I said, "Well, let me stay one more inning. Let me see one more inning." No, I got paid. I used to go to Camonas and get ice cream. Guy used to go over there and buy ice cream.
El Anon.
El Anon. Yep. So that, and basically, I guess about another year, a couple of years later, things didn't work out in my marriage, and I was working in the post office, and I decided I wrote going to umpire. I said I'm going to umpire school, and I quit. I should have taken a leave of absence, but I quit. That's how crazy it was. Because I said I'm going to umpire school, and I'm going to be in the big leagues in a few years, and God knew what He was doing because in 5 years I was in the big leagues. So that's pretty quick for an umpire.
Yeah, for sure. And when you were in the Florida State League, did you run into any of the Key West guys? Was Randy there at that time?
No, Randy actually was in the Florida State League before I went to umpire school. I
Okay.
umpired Randy Sterling in AAA. When I was in AAA, he was in AAA. So I caught him up. He started before me, but I actually caught him up. So, but I did umpire.
You laughed.
Yeah. So I did
I told you
umpire.
he was a legend, you guys. The man's a legend right there.
Not about it.
Told you.
So anyway, um, well, I umpired Boog. Boog was I think his last, might have been his last year. 1975 might have been Boog's 76, maybe. Might have been Boog's last year when he was with Cleveland. I umpired him, in a game which was really funny. Carl Taylor actually was catching for the Cardinals when I went to umpire school, and I worked the exhibition game behind the plate with him catching. So
That's
I did,
Boog's brother.
yeah. So I ran across those guys. Um, it wasn't. It's not a real. It's comfortable, but it's not a real comfortable feeling because you know each other, and it's kind of hard being. At that time, it was difficult being able to do what you're supposed to do with somebody you know. So
A conflict of interest.
kind of, yeah. You don't want to be there. It's compromising, and it's not a good feeling. Let's put it that way. An umpire never wants to be in that situation where you you feel, especially in a professional way. If it's just a regular game, it's okay, but in a professional way, you don't. That's not a good feeling. It's not good.
So Richie, that brings
You'd
me
rather not have it.
you were a phenomenal umpire because I
Thank you.
watched you many a times. Your strike zone was where it was supposed to be. And of course, this might be a sour subject, but the Jeffrey Maier incident. You talk about being put in a situation in Yankee Stadium. How did you handle what came after that? You know,
Well, that's a
you
good.
know in your heart you make the right call. How did you handle what comes after that?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question, and it was very difficult. Because we're very proud of what we do. Nobody wants to be in that. No umpire wants to be in those kind of situations. It was probably the worst winter that I ever had. It was very difficult because it was at the end of the year. It was very difficult after that working those games because I still had that was game one. So
96, right?
Oh yeah, no. Was it game one or game two? No, it had to be game. It was game one. So it was a very difficult time after that because from then we got the next game there in Yankee Stadium, and then we got to go to Baltimore for 3 games. I never saw the outside of the stadium in Baltimore. I had security take me to the ballpark, drive me right inside the stadium, drop me right in front of the door of the dressing room, and after the game, the same thing. So we had security around my family, my wife, my kids, because they were there. A couple of the kids were there, and we had security around them the whole time. One of my daughters, who was oblivious to what was going on, kept saying, "Mom, why are all these men standing around us? What they were looking at us and standing around us." And my wife had to say, "There's security. They want to make sure nobody bothers you because of what your dad did the other night." So, and again, I really couldn't wait to spring training to see the Orioles again. You have that, you live with that until you get to face that person again. Like when you have an ejection, one of the things I always used to do when I had an ejection, the next day, I would look that guy right in the eye, and let's talk about this. Let's talk about what happened last night. Now, we had some that would start laughing and come over and said, blah, 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 this, that, the other. We had some that had the sourpuss. And what I used to say to them, I just say, hey, you want to keep fighting? We can keep fighting. You're not going to win, but we can keep fighting if you want. And, they look at you like, this guy's crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm telling you the truth. You ain't going to win. I got the hammer. You ain't winning. You're not going to win.
Well,
So that winter, was very difficult. I had to do a press conference after that game. I don't even know how many people were in there. I'm going to say 250, 300 writers. I got all the lights on me. I had never done a press conference in my life. Now to do a press conference after that, I was just barely able to see the replay in the locker room, after the game to see what, So the PR lady from the league was there with me, and she said, "Don't worry, if it gets out of hand, I'll handle it. We'll cut them off. We'll cut it off, and we'll just go." But I really didn't know what to say, to be honest with you. And so when I got up there, what I said was, I guess I'm the only umpire that can get in trouble working right field, because in right field you usually don't have any issue. And everybody started laughing. And I thought, it's not gonna be that bad. It's not gonna
good
be.
icebreaker.
And it really was not that bad. They could have sliced me up and down, and they didn't. And it's all because of the reputation that I had in the game. the
Yeah,
hard work, that I had put in all those years, the reputation that I had with the ball players and the managers and the writers and whoever. And unfortunately for umpires, you don't know that until you do something like that. Something like that happens, then all of a sudden everybody says, "Oh no, he's a good umpire." You read about how good you are, but they don't do it. The only people who will tell you how good you are is the guys you work with. The guys you're working with, we share, what we do out there. So I remember the first game I had with the Orioles in spring training, because the Orioles were training in Sarasota at the time. So I went down there. I was at third base, and I remember Brady
Brady
uh,
Young.
Brady Anderson, center fielder.
Brady,
Brady Anderson came out of the dugout, ran right by me, and said, "Hey, Richie, how was your winter?" I said it was horse shit. And he looked at me and he stopped and he said, "What happened? You know, like what's wrong?" I said, "Well, I had that play I had last year in the playoffs." He put his arm around me and said, "Are you kidding? That play didn't hurt us. They had a better team. They beat us. That play had nothing to do with anything that happened in that series. So don't even think about it." Cal Ripken did the same. He wasn't as cordial as Brady Anderson was because Cal Ripken and I really never had that good of a relationship. No, he was a little surly. Everybody thinks he's, you know, greatest thing since sliced bread, but he's a little surly. But Brady Anderson, Tony Tarasco, who was the right fielder at the time, he came over, gave me a hug, and said, "Hey, forget about that." And that game's over. They beat us. We had no chance. Blah 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 blah. So after that, that was, you know, I got,
That was the Dixon.
I've got to, I got to, I have not met him personally in person, but I did a podcast with Jeffrey Maier.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's one.
He,
I'll tell you what, he is so nice. What a gentleman. I mean, he's a man now. He's got kids. He coaches his kids, and he in the podcast. If you listen to the podcast, um, he was so. I don't know what the word I want to use. He felt so bad for me.
Apologetic, yeah.
What what I after he heard what I went through and what I had to do and the whole thing. He was like, um, and uh, the guy that got us to do the podcast was a writer for the Yankees. He's no longer a writer for the Yankees, but he called me one day and he said, "Hey, would you do a podcast with Jeffrey Maier?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And he did. Now this year we were supposed to do a banquet together in New Jersey, and he had to bail out because of his job. They sent him at that time that we were going to do the banquet. His job, they sent him to somewhere else, and he couldn't be there that weekend. So hopefully we're going to do it this winter coming up. We're going to do it again if I'm still around. I hope I'm still around.
Comes full circle, huh?
It's going to be it's going to, they're all Yankee fans up there. They're going to go nuts. They'll go nuts in that, and and it's going to be, it'll be a lot of fun. Because I think he's a great guy, and I tell people, I would have done the same thing he did. If I would have been out there with a glove, I would have gone out there trying to get that ball.
sure.
So he didn't do, he was a kid. He's 12 years old. He didn't do anything. I just wish he would have caught the ball. Because if he would have caught it, it would have been a whole lot easier to see.
Right.
I didn't see the ball. I know the ball was over the fence, but I didn't even see him. To be honest with you, I was standing there. I didn't even see him. So to me, it was an easy call until I saw everybody jumping. It was like, well, something's wrong.
Well, you talked about what umpires go through, and that gave us some great insight on the life that an umpire goes through when they make a difficult call, whether you're for or against. And, and the fact that Brady Anderson put his arm around you and the right fielder put his arm around you and said, "Hey, forget it." They looked in the mirror and they said, "Hey, that didn't make any difference." And that's just a tribute to the umpire that you were, because like I said earlier, you were one hell of an umpire.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
I've got him. I don't know if the internet is right on this, but I've got 3,398 games that you called. That's a hell of a career.
In I think if you look it up, and I think it's 1976. I think I umpired 100. I think it was 167 games. All right, and there's only
And
100, and
and
there's
one
only
season,
and there's only 152 games. So I must have worked some extra games. I didn't know that till I read it not too long ago. Because in one of those podcasts, the guy asked me, he said, "I got it here. You worked X amount of games. I said, I guess I did. We don't count games. We don't. You know, that number to me, 3,000 games or whatever it is. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a big number, but it was just games to us. We know what we do. We go out there every day. We're ready every day. It's a kind of a routine thing, but at the same time, we do it with a lot of pride. All the guys do it with a lot of pride.
And I want to go ahead and add, because you probably won't, but I'm going to add to it 2 All-Star games, 3 Division Series, 5 League Championships, and 4 World Series. That's a big career.
Doesn't get better than that, brother.
Yeah.
We had
That's good stuff, sir.
back then that was pretty good. I worked 3 World Series in the 80s. I worked 81, 84, and 89. So that was pretty much a big highlight to be able to work 3 World Series in 10 years. That's not too many guys have done that. There are guys that have done it, but not too many of them. Not too many.
You talk about that full circle moment. You go into the World Series as a kid, and then now you're part of the World Series, 4 World Series. Do you even have a moment where you can be out on the field during pre-games or whatever and warm-ups and soak it up? And do your parents get to come? Do your family come? You mentioned your wife and kids were there, but do you get to appreciate the moment, or are you just in it and working it?
No. My first World Series was 1981, and it was the Yankees and the Dodgers. So of course, growing up, like I said earlier, I was a Yankee fan. By the '81, I was not a Yankee fan anymore. Believe me, I was done with them. But when I was a kid, the Yankees and the Dodgers were in the World Series almost every year. They played each other a bunch of times. So I remember going upstairs for whatever reason. I had to go upstairs from the locker room. We got there early before the game. Of course, we got there 3 hours before the game, and especially doing big games, always real early. And I remember being upstairs looking down at Yankee Stadium and seeing the banners, seeing the monuments from where I was standing, and all the nostalgic moments that have happened in that stadium. And you talk about soaking it in. Yes, I thought about probably every and any moment that I ever had, watching or listening to a game. And it was awesome. It was just a great feeling. Um, Working, my mom was there, my mother-in-law was there. My kids were too young to go at the time, in '81, but they did go in '84 and '89. And if you remember, in '89 was the earthquake World Series.
That's right.
Oakland and the Giants,
Oakland.
right?
Yeah, that was a little shaky to say the least.
No pun intended.
So you got a Key West guy. You got a Key West conch in an earthquake. I had no idea what was going on. None. I was under a table. I had one of the guys on the crew was from California, and he knew immediately. He knew as soon as he heard the banging. He said, "Guys, you better get onto something because that's an earthquake." And we were under there, and it was amazing. Looking back at it, how really to us nothing happened. You know what I mean? We had no casualties. We had nothing at the stadium. We didn't find out what was going on till probably 45 minutes. We thought we were going to play. We were, it's just going to be a little thing here. We're going to play. Then when the stories all started coming in, it was amazing. It was just crazy.
The bridge collapsed, right?
Crazy. Oh, the bridge collapsed. There was fires. There was fires down in the marina where we were staying. It took us 3 hours to get home. There was no lights. There was no lights in the city. We were in a bus. My oldest daughter was pregnant at the time. Like I said, I had my mom, I had my mother-in-law. My wife had her side of the family there. I had all my kids were there. And it was scary for us, not knowing, what's going to happen. And you've never been, like, I don't mind hurricanes, I don't mind being in a storm. I mean, I've been in them. I've never been in
You know they're coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know they coming, and I know how to prepare for them. I buy that Miller Lite right away. Get that beer like we used to do when we were kids. We had beer parties.
Out of Enchilada and you're good to go.
That's it. That's correct. Yes, sir.
Oh boy.
So we had you talking about the World Series. Is there another game that stands out? We talked about one of the tough games, but is there another game that stands out as your favorite?
Well, I umpired a perfect game with Len Barker in Cleveland way back, and it was May of I think 81. May of 81. That was quite a game. It's the first time I worked a no hitter. And the stuff that these guys have when they're on their game is unbelievable. How they can throw a pitch wherever they want it. So you don't see that often, you know. But I do have a little story. I'm going to go back to the 1955 World Series where the Yankees were playing the Dodgers, and like I said, it was the first time the Dodgers ever beat the Yankees. And of course, I was a Yankee fan when I was a kid. The Dodgers beat them, and of course, I was 12 years old, 13 years old, whatever, 11, I don't know. I was crying after the series because it got beat. My dad said, "What are you crying about? Get over it." So Johnny Padres had just come out of the Army and went to pitch for the Dodgers, and I believe he won either won 2 games or he won 3 games in that series. So I got a game one day in Minneapolis, and he's a pitching coach for the Twins, and I hear him yelling from the dugout. Because he has a very distinctive voice. I know it was him. So I'm looking in the dugout, I'm looking at him, and he's like, going like this. Next inning, he comes out to talk to the pitcher. So I walk out there. Now I've known him for quite a while, so it's not like I don't know him. He doesn't know me. I've known him for quite a while, and I've never ever said this to him. He comes out and I said, "What are you going to do? You going to change the pitcher? Or what are you going to do?" And he says, "No, I'm going to leave him in." He said, "Hey, there are a couple of close pitches there." And I looked at him and I said, "John, let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was 12 years old, you made me cry. And I'm going to tell you, I have never forgotten that. So you keep yelling at me from that dugout." I said, "I'm going to run your ass." And he's looking at me. His eyes were that big, looking at me. So he walks off the mound. He's shaking his head like, what's he talking about? So the next day he comes in the locker room and he says, "What did I do? When did I make you cry?" So I tell him the story. I said, "Well, I went to the World Series in '55 with my dad." I said, "I was a Yankee fan and you beat the Yankees." So I started crying. He started laughing. I mean, he laughed and laughed and laughed. He said, I could never figure out what the heck you were talking about when you told me you were making me cry, that I made you cry.
My God.
Right in the middle of a ball game. Now, this is the middle of, this is going on during the game. So it was a good time. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun on the field, just like I did in school. I don't think anybody had more fun in school than I did. I didn't study. I didn't make good grades, but I had a lot of fun. And I never wanted to miss school because I had so much fun in school. My grandmother said, "You got fever. You shouldn't go to school." I said, "I'm going." The only time I wouldn't go to school was during the World Series. That's the only time. That's it.
And you turned out all right.
Yeah. Hey, the good Lord knew what he's doing. He put me in the right place at the right time. That's just life. That's the way life is. And we in October I'm gonna have 50 years of being married. I got 4 kids and I've got 9 grandkids, 7 girls, and 4 of them are athletic as can be. One of my granddaughters made All-American last year in soccer, Division One, All-American. I think she's in the portal right now, and I believe she's gonna go to Texas A&M, and they're giving us some pretty good money, which is
NIL.
NIL, and so I think she's gonna go. And my son-in-law is a major league umpire also. He works right now. He's got 15 years in. He wears my
Awesome.
number. He wears my number. All the girls playing soccer wear my number, and wear their dad's number now, of course. But we got a good family. Hasn't been easy, like everybody else's family. Everybody has their ups and downs, but God has really taken care of us. They're healthy. Everybody seems to be healthy. My mom lived to be 100, and my dad lived 96.
Tabaquito, right? Tabaquito, cigar.
Big cigar.
Big cigar.
Cigar was a character. We can write a book of We can write a book of Cigar.
I heard a lot about him growing up.
Yeah, I bet. He was a character. He was. They threw the mold away.
Richie, I'll bring up a name real quick since we talking about family. Otilia Pazzo, Albert's wife.
Yeah.
When my mom passed away 10 years ago, she's become like my mom, and I probably speak to Oti 2 to 3 times a week. And
well, they were good friends growing up, right?
Yes, they were. And she tells me stories about all you guys hanging out together. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, let's see. One of the girls owns a restaurant here in Dunedin, which is right on
Nina, Oti's granddaughter. Yeah.
Her granddaughter. Well, my daughter went to the restaurant because they got Cuban food.
They do.
He made ropa vieja sandwich or something.
Right. Yeah.
So my daughter said to her, how'd you learn how to do this? She said, well, I'm from Key West. And my daughter goes, well, my dad's from Key West. And what's your name? So, and they're talking, and she's texting me saying, Dad, do you know the Pazzo family? I know the Pazzo family. So she tells me who she is. I said, will you tell her that her dad was named after me?
That's correct.
And my sister was, her daughter, Othelia's daughter, was named after my sister. How about that? So,
talking about your sister, do you know that she was married to Dink, correct?
Still married. Still going.
Married. Yeah. Do you know that in 1974, Dink lent me his brand new Pontiac Grand Prix to take my date to the senior prom?
He's true crazy. Story.
Oh, yeah, he always has been.
The purple one, was it purple? Yeah. Convertible?
It was. Yeah.
Let me, I don't know how he did that. It must have been before I borrowed it, because I borrowed it one night to go out on a date. I was home from the Marine Corps on leave. You know where I ended up? In the boulevard remember when they started digging for bottles?
Yeah, Bottle Beach. I
ended up in Bottle Beach in one of those holes because I didn't know anything about it. I had to walk. My mother was living in the projects at the time, and we had to walk home because I didn't want to call anybody because my mother said, "Don't borrow his car." And I said, "Well, I don't have a car. I need a car. I'm going out with this girl." I'm not going to tell you who the girl was because I know you know her, but and that
you don't need to mention any names.
No names. So I ended up in one of those holes like this. I'm telling you, the car was like this. Oh my God!
I can just imagine Dean.
And it's so funny when you said that. I'm thinking if he did that after I had done that, after I took his car.
Your sister worked.
They're still going. They're still going.
Yeah, that's awesome. Your sister worked for Dr. Scarlett, and
Dr. Scarlett,
he was the surgeon for everybody, and I was always in there. And Dink was gracious enough to do that. So please give them my best.
I will.
Tell them
I
that I'm
will.
still kicking. I'm going to be 70 in October, but that was 1974.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah,
You're gonna be 70. My God, I remember when you guys used to be running around playing little league and
absolutely.
playing
Yeah,
ball. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, uh, yeah, I left there in 1970. 70 was when I went to umpire school. I came
Wow.
back for maybe I might have come back for another year, and then finally I moved. I stayed up here because I had everything up here. Florida State League. I worked 2 years in the Florida State League, which was
Yep.
right here. All the teams are right around here. I worked the instructional league, which is all right here. So I worked all year.
Yeah.
I didn't just I didn't just umpire during the season. I umpired after the season was over. All these extra leagues.
Winter ball. Yeah.
Went ball. I went to Dominican twice. That's going to Dominican Republic and umpiring is classic, to say to say the least. To say the least.
Well,
Who's tougher, Conch fans or Dominican fans?
No, there's no comparison. The Conch fans are loud, but they're not physical. Dominican fans are physical. Yeah, they're Dominican and
It's brutal.
the baseball there is completely different than uh, anywhere else. They're so passionate. They they're very very passionate, very passionate. I mean, they sell bottles of liquor. They sell rum. They
That's the
sell
thing.
they sell bottles of rum. They don't sell a drink of rum. They sell bottles of rum, and everybody comes prepared. They bring their own little cups, their own little shot glasses, like butchers. You know,
yeah.
they got them. They're all over it. Everybody does it.
And I'm sure
Uh,
they become projectiles later on, right?
yeah, yes, they do. You learn as an umpire to stand at second base when all that stuff goes on. They
Yeah.
start throwing stuff. You better go to second base because you can't.
Can't
They
read.
can't. They can't reach you there. They can't reach you.
That's funny. I was gonna ask you what position did you prefer, calling behind home plate or the lines? Where'd you?
No, behind home plate. That's where the action is. That's where you want to be. Yeah,
That's
I
where
love.
you fell in love with
Yeah,
umpiring,
that's
and
right.
that was
That's
it.
right. Yeah, yeah. That's
And you
what.
mentioned Dominican Republic, Billy Wardlow, another Key West guy who's had a tremendous career in professional baseball with the Blue Jays. He was part of the World Baseball Classic team. The Dominicans hired him as their equipment manager, and Victor and Billy are tight.
Yeah,
So
I see Billy quite a bit. Um, During the spring. We text each other every once in a while. His dad was up here this year, doing spring training, so I got to see that. I think it was this year, or last year. I mean, the years are getting so they're piling up quick. So,
Yeah, they are.
um, but I did get to see him. I did get to see him. I see him all the time during the spring. I see him 3 or 4 times during the spring. I went over to Jesuit High School to see
Yep.
Hernandez,
yes,
his
going to
teams.
state.
I went over there. I've talked to the team. My son-in-law and I went over and talked to the team last year. His team. Um, his dad made molletes for me. He had
Ooh!
yeah. Oh,
And did
John,
he make them good, brother?
he made them. Nah, they were. Gave me 8. He made 8. So I gave my youngest daughter 4, and we kept 4. Cause when we used to drive to Key West, when John had the store there, that
Yep.
was that was the first stop before going anywhere. We drive in on Flagler and turn and go right in there and get molletes. And my daughter loved them. She loved them.
You want to hear a crazy thing? My wife, when we land in Key West, the first thing we do, get the rental car, go to the boulevard, make a right, and we go to Miami Subs because they got the best conch fritters on the island.
Yeah, yeah,
Before
uh,
anything, we got to go to Miami Subs and get conch fritters.
yeah.
Yeah,
I used to
that's
get the conch fritters, the sauce and stuff from George
Yeah,
when he had
right.
the when he
Yeah,
had the they had the truck going around.
yep.
So I miss that. I miss
It's
talk. I
a
miss
great
talking to
day.
George. I miss talking to George. He was.
You know, the
He,
last time I saw Georgie, I was on a golf course in Boca Raton, Florida, and I'm on the putting green before before we get out, and I hit a ball, and a ball comes and hits mine, and I look, and it's George, Bill Trout, and Aldo Busan. And
oh
I
my
said
God.
to them, they'll let anybody out here. And he was like, Victor, what are you doing out here? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, he was wonderful. Wonderful man. Wonderful man.
I we had a lot of talks about life, and he just
True friends. True
yeah.
friends.
I'm like on deck. I feel like I'm the on deck hitter every time I see Bobby Cox is 84. Bobby
Yeah.
Cox is 84 years old. It was same
Yeah.
age, and you're looking into the like, oh man, how lucky am I? To
Yeah,
be
but
able to
brother,
go.
you're sharp as a jack right now.
Oh,
Listening to you,
I
you're
play golf.
good, bro.
I play golf 3 times a week.
That's awesome.
Are
And
you
keep
kidding?
drinking those broochies.
I drink Cuban coffee every morning.
That's it. See
And
there, Joy? That's it.
And you
That's
know
the
what?
secret.
And you know what? I never drank coffee in my life until about 2 years ago. Never drank coffee. Just I would go out to if I had Cuban food at a restaurant, I would have coffee afterwards. Not that I
Okay.
didn't like it. I just wasn't. That wasn't me. I wasn't a coffee guy. Now I can't. I don't even want to go to sleep. I wanted to be morning so I could have coffee. And I got my and I got my wife on it too because she didn't drink coffee either. So her and I, yeah. We're on a streak.
Yeah, baby.
Cuban coffee, Cuban bread. I remember my grandmother. You know, we lived. My mother's house was on Margaret Street,
Okay.
right by the Siboney. You know where the
Yeah.
Siboney is, the
Yep.
restaurant.
Yep.
Well, that
Yep.
house behind it on Margaret Street, that was my mother's house.
Okay.
I remember my grandmother going to the bakery. Used to be a bakery straight down on the other side of Margaret. She come home with that hot bread, and she put butter on it, and then we scoffed that up. My mother loved bread. My grandmother loved bread. I love bread.
And nothing like you.
I eat any kind of bread, but Cuban bread is
It's the best.
We got a couple restaurants in Tampa that we go to have Cuban food. We couple here close, probably about 10 minutes from here, from my house. That it's not like what I would like. Like my wife cooks. My wife learned to cook Cuban food from my grandmother, and she wrote all the recipes down. My grandmother had no recipes, but she sit there and watched her and wrote it down because they all did things by hand, by the eye, by
No
hand. There was
measurement.
no measurements, no nothing. No, my mother made the best. My mother couldn't cook. My grandmother did all the cooking in my house, but my mother made the best flan that you ever want to eat. And she would put it in the oven, go to the store, come back, take it out, and my wife would say, "How the hell does she do that? How does she do that?" She said, "I can't make it like hers. I'm trying to make it like hers, and I can't." But my wife cooks ropa vieja, boliche. She makes a boliche out of this world. I'm telling you. And we're happy. We eat Cuban food as much as I can, as often as I can.
Good for you, brother.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I don't know if you can get any of that stuff in Atlanta. Where you at?
Yeah, brother. We got some places up here.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where are you in Atlanta?
We're north of Atlanta, about 30 minutes north of the city, in Alpharetta.
Oh, I know where they are. I got some friends in Marietta.
Okay.
Right there.
Yeah.
We go visit them almost every year on our way.
Brother, you have to get my number. You have to call me.
I was up that way. Mike Hughes.
Okay.
Mike Hughes lives a little bit east of Georgia, of Atlanta. A little bit
you know
east.
who lived over there too was Steve Thompson, Flub, that used to, they caught in Key West, and he moved down to St. Augustine now. But yeah, he lived out there in Marietta. Joy, I know you got another question for Richie.
We might have to do more episodes, do this more frequently. But I do have a few questions that I wanted to ask. Like I said, we put it out on social media and we had a few fans that wanted to ask some questions. Harry Russell, he wanted to know which pitchers did you see play that you knew they were lights out, that they were going to shut down the hitters?
Of course, anytime you work Nolan Ryan, it was always a classic matchup. Dave Stewart, who pitched for the Oakland A's, was also a guy that you really look forward umpiring. Um, Roger Clemens, of course. There's so many great pitchers, and a lot of these pitchers, not many last as long as Clemens did, Ryan, for whatever reason, and you get a guy like Ron Guidry, who back in the 80s, for 5 years in the 80s, was probably the greatest pitcher in the game. Um, and but again, it's only for 4 or 5 years, and longevity. When you look at longevity, you got to look at Clemens, you got to look at Ryan. Uh, Randy Johnson was probably the toughest guy to umpire in my career, simply because he was so tall. He was left-handed, and his arm angle was completely different from anybody else. There was nobody that was that tall, left-handed, that came from the side, from the three-quarter side that he threw from, and his ball moved, always moved. I didn't care what kind of pitch he threw. He had a lot of movement in his pitches.
Another question, you mentioned Nolan Ryan. Do you remember how many games you called for him?
No, we don't. We don't really keep track. I called quite a bit. I remember working a game with him. Um, when he was with the Angels when I first got in the league, and he was kind of a rookie. And he didn't know where the ball was going. That was kind of dangerous because he threw so hard. And he pitched in California, and most of the time, they're 3 hours behind. So they played, if they were going to play a 7 o'clock game Eastern time, they start at 4, and there was all kind of shadows um, out there on the field, and with him when he was pitching, it was very, very dangerous for the hitter. It's kind of because it was hard to see, very difficult to see, and that's nothing to play with. You got to be careful.
Yeah, he was my dad's favorite player. Um, Dahlia Malby wanted to know, did you ever eject one of the Key West players?
Oh, not that I can think of. No, no, no. I'd mentioned earlier that I was a Yankee fan when I was a kid, and actually my favorite player when I was one of my favorite players when I was a kid was Billy Martin, and Billy Martin was my first ejection in the major leagues. My first play job in Texas when he was managing Texas, I threw him out of a game. Of course, I threw him out a couple other times.
And before we started recording, you were showing me around your home office there, some of the memorabilia, and you have a painting there with you and him going at it.
Yes, we do. That was, yeah, that was a painting that one of my friends made. He did it himself. Also, as a side note, Nolan Ryan's only been kicked out of a game once, and I kicked him out of the game, not because he was arguing or anything, but because he threw at somebody. It was a beanball thing, and I had to throw him out. But I liked Ryan. I got along great with him. So,
I did see you have, again, if the internet is correct, right? 109 ejections, and I did see that he was on the list for
yeah,
hitting the batter
yeah,
intentionally.
yeah. I'm proud of that too. By the way, I'm proud of I'm proud of the 109. I'm proud of it. I don't
Every one of them deserved it, right?
That's right. I don't regret any one of those. None. None. And
And
there's probably some that are not in there because sometimes at some point in our careers we didn't write reports on ejections because
okay.
because the league wouldn't do anything to them. So we decided if the league's not going to do anything to them, why am I going to take my time to write a report? So we didn't write reports. So I'm sure it's probably more than 109, but I'll take that 109 and be proud of it.
During your career, there's been a lot of changes to baseball currently between the bags getting bigger, the ghost runner, the tie game, the pitch clock, now the ABS. Two-part question. What are your thoughts on those changes, and what changes do you think we've yet to see? And that question's from my nephew, Clay Fraga.
Well, there's two changes that I don't mind. I don't mind the pitch clock. I think the pitch clock has helped get the game going a little quicker. Getting some of the nonsense of the game, like a pitcher throwing to first base 5 or 6 times, stepping off, so that's helped. That's helped. I would like to see them extend that time in the playoffs in the World Series a little bit, because I think that in crucial situations sometimes where it's a little bit too quick. Um, you're in the World Series, you got the bases loaded. You gotta try to think about what you're gonna do, and when you don't have that much time, you're very apt to make a mistake. And I hate to see a guy lose a game because he made a mistake, because he had to do it he had to make a decision so quick on what he's going to throw or where he's going to step or anything like that. I don't mind. Um, actually I'm kind of used to the replays, um, which I guess I contributed to the introduction of the replay in 1996 when I had that play in Yankee Stadium. So I don't mind that. I think we should get those plays. So I don't mind those. I don't like the ABS. I think the ABS is embarrassing to an umpire. I think it's working on his psyche because there's more attention on the umpires now than ever before. The whole idea is to let the umpire the game and leave him alone so nobody knows who he is. Now every pitch is, oh, you should challenge. Oh, you shouldn't challenge. Oh, that was close. Oh, there's that. It's all about the strike zone. They have shrunk the strike zone down to nothing. The guy, and I just want to let the fans know that these umpires, they're graded on every pitch. Every single pitch that's thrown, they're graded. And to have a strike zone that is so small right now, they have no space to work to get to take the benefit of the doubt. There's no benefit of the doubt for an umpire anymore. It's 17 17 inches and that's it. Period. It had up and down, it has shrunk, and it's going to be a lot of more walks this year because of the ABS. There's going to be more walks. There's going to be more pitches thrown. Your starting pitchers are not going to have big time records. They're not going to win 15, 16, 17 games. And if they do, they're very fortunate because they're going to throw too many pitches. And then they have to depend on the bullpen. You cannot depend on the bullpen every day. It just doesn't work. you have to have a starting pitcher has to get to the point where he's got to pitch. You got to have at least one or two guys that can pitch 7 innings so that the bullpen is not stretched. That's why you see so many transactions as far as relief pitchers. Relief pitchers being sent down. They work 3 innings. The next day they're sent down to AAA. The reason they're being sent down is not because they're not any good, is because they're going to bring somebody else up to pitch in his place for 1, 2, 3 days, whatever they can do. And then they'll bring the guy back up. Because once he pitches 3 innings, they can't use him anymore for 2 days, at least 2 days. That's just the way it is today. So it's going to cause more pitches, more base zone balls. I just, again, the psychic part. I know what I know what I'm talking about because I've been there. I've missed pitches. I mean, I miss plays where I have to be out there on the field. I know how I felt. So now the umpire makes a call. They challenge the call. He's got to take his mask off. He's got to turn around and he's got to tell the people, this guy thinks I missed this pitch. And there's times where they are going to miss the pitch. And if you see the length of how they miss a pitch, zero, zero, 0.1. That's a hundredth of an inch. I mean, you can't put you can't put a dollar bill between the ball and the strike zone. And that's just the way I have my own ideas. I don't know why they would have to do that. They crunched the numbers. I think they crunched the numbers the wrong way. They gave the umpires less credit than they deserve. They had the umpires averaging 94%. The umpires are not averaging 94%. Those guys are averaging 97, 98%. And the reason they're making it so low is because they wanted to implement this system. That's just the way it is. And now you have umpires umpiring a box. They're not actually umpiring the game. I mean, you got a 3-0 count, and you got a ball that's that far off the plate, and now you got to call that pitch a ball, because otherwise you're going to get a mark that says you missed the pitch. Where normally in back in the day, 3-0, the score is 6-0. Who cares? Let's go. Let's call a strike. Make him hit the ball, and
Yeah, as a fan, I want to see the guy swing the bat, not sit there and wait for the perfect pitch. So
well, and that's the thing. The purpose, excuse me, the purpose of shrinking the strike zone is for them to hit the ball more often. But that works to me, it works the opposite. Because once a hitter knows that pitcher has to throw that ball in that strike zone, he will not swing at that pitch until they do that. So consequently, they're going to be taking more pitches because they know how tough it is for the pitcher to get that ball in that strike zone. Once they get used to that, they're not used to it yet. They're getting used to the system. They're getting used. Once they get used to that, once the hitters start getting used to it, a guy like Aaron Judge will walk more this year than ever before. He'll have a total walk, and he swings at bad pitches, but he's still going to walk because they're not going to pitch to him. They're not going to throw the ball down the middle to him. They do sometimes. I don't know why. but
I wish they would. I'm a Yankee fan, so he can hit him out all day.
Hey, Joy, can you hear me?
I hear you now, Vicky. Okay. I'm glad you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
back.
that. And and Sandy disappeared on me, so I had to figure out this thing on my own.
Okay, you did good. Welcome back.
Thank you. Hey,
we were just talking about rule changes.
I got a question for you, Richie, in regard to that. I know that as hitters, sometimes you say a guy like Aaron Judge swings at bad pitches. Being such a great hitter, he probably, when he does swing at a bad pitch, he has his mind made up to swing before he sees it. Do you think players do that sometimes? Have their mind made up before they see the pitch to call it a strike or a ball?
No, you can't do it. You can't. We rely so much. We rely a lot on the catcher.
Okay.
The catcher. But an umpire. That's why I think it's so silly when a catcher catches a ball outside and tries to bring it back, which they all do that now. Right. They move the ball. The catchers are moving the ball all the time now. All the time. And they actually giving credit to catchers who say they influence the umpire more than the other guy. And there's no such thing. The umpire, when that ball gets near the umpire already knows what he's going to call. The fact that, as a matter of fact, the fact that he moved the glove
should be
makes it worse. Makes it worse. Yeah. That means that you're telling me, hey, I had to move the glove because it was outside. I got to bring it in. Oh, I got to bring it down. Oh, I got to bring it up. Why move it? The problem is that the umpires today are kind of handcuffed and talking to the catchers and educating the players like we did. We used to tell the catcher, don't move. You move the glove, I'm going to call the pitch a ball. That's it. Period. I don't care where it is.
Now, did you like positioning yourself above the catcher, inside, shoulder, outside?
No, inside, in the slot. Well, we call the slot. You work on the Actually, when you work in the top, you're going to get your head knocked off.
Okay.
Most of the foul balls that go back,
Straight back.
they come back between the shoulders of the catcher. Okay, not all of them, but most of them will come back when a hitter swings and the ball comes back. It's between the shoulders of the catcher most of the time. So if you have your head over the top of the catcher's head, you got a good chance of getting hit. And we've had guys get hit a lot. We have guys had to retire because they've gotten hit so many times that it's affected their neck and their concussion protocol and 4 or 5 times. So when I watch a game now, even now today, I watch a game, I see a guy like I saw the other day. I saw this kid over the top of the catcher. I called one of the supervisors and I said, "Hey, do me a favor, call this kid, tell him to get in the slot, or otherwise he's gonna get his head knocked off, and his career is gonna be shortened, and he's gonna have concussions, and he's gonna have a problem." They have them a lot. It's not like it doesn't happen. It's not like it happens once in a while. It happens. We got 4 or 5 guys that have had to retire because of getting hit in the mask. And those guys are the guys that work over the top of the catcher, almost on top of the catcher. You know why they do that? Because they're getting graded. They don't want to miss a pitch. They're willing to take that chance so they can get a job, so they can get hired and keep their job. They're willing to do that.
So is the zone, Richie, still corner to corner, knees to letters, or has it changed, or does it vary per umpire?
Yeah. I said earlier, you missed that segment.
Yeah, sorry.
That it was the strike zone has shrunk.
Okay.
The umpires, the strike zone is 17 inches. The plate is 17 inches. The umpires, when they started grading the umpires had, it was 18 inches. Okay, they had a half inch on inside, half inch outside to play with. Okay, they call it a buffer zone. So when the ball was on the buffer zone, it could either be a ball or a strike, whatever you called, you got it right. It doesn't make any sense, but because I think you should just call a strike. If it's that close, you got to call a strike. That's just my thinking. But they had a buffer zone. They don't have a buffer zone anymore. The strike zone has shrunk, and that's why you see so many pitches on the outside part of the plate being called balls. There's more balls called now on the outside part of the plate than ever before.
Do you anticipate any other rule changes coming to Major League Baseball?
I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if they change anything. And they're willing to do whatever. I understand now they got some kind of mechanism that's going to call the half swing. It's going to tell them check swing, when the guy swung or when he didn't. So I don't know how they're going to do that, but supposedly they're experimenting with that now. So I don't know if they're going to have some kind of mechanism on the bat. I guess I don't know how they're going to do it.
I was talking to Joy about the differences in the game itself with the hitting instructors teaching this and fielding instructors. I don't understand why you had to take something that wasn't broke and try to fix it. I don't understand.
I don't either, but
it's always been a phenomenal game.
Baseball is an imperfect game, and they want to make it perfect. They want to make the game perfect. You can't. It's an imperfect game. There's all the history of the game. There's been no hitters where the catchers missed the ball, and the guy gets a base hit. Just all these little things, like my play in right field. All those things. That's an imperfect game.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you a story. Milt Pappas. Remember Milt Pappas, the pitcher for Cincinnati?
Yes.
He's pitching in at the Cubs. The umpires, he's working a perfect game. 9th inning, 2 outs, pitch comes in, ball 4. So he doesn't have a perfect game. So he walks off the mound. He comes to the umpire and says, "If you would have called that pitch a strike, you would have been in the history books. You would have been the 7th umpire to work a perfect game." And the umpire looked at him and said, well, who was the guy that did it the sixth time? What's the umpire's name? You can't name him, can you? That's how famous I would have been. Nobody would have known. You know what I mean? In other words,
Yeah.
I gotta do my job. I can't stand there and go, oh boy, I'm gonna give this guy the perfect game because my name's gonna be in the history book. We don't operate like that.
Yeah.
That's just that just doesn't happen. So it's an imperfect game. Players make errors, umpires make errors, managers make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Everybody makes a mistake somewhere, along the line.
Someone fails on every play, on every pitch in the game. Someone fails.
I mean, you got guys playing today hitting 170. Back in the day, 170, you'd be working for UPS.
Thank you very much.
You're not going anywhere. Today you look at the lineups.
At least send his ass back down to single A and tell him to start over or something.
You look at hitter, the first hitter, the second hitter, and the third hitter. Then you go down, someone just barely 200. There's a line of one something. A lot of them.
A lot of them below the Mendoza line.
And back in the day, you were in Double A or Triple A if you didn't hit. I mean, that's just the way it was. So, but the game, listen, everything's different. How about the pitchers throwing the ball up? I mean, they warm up. They throw 8 pitches with the ball. They get ready to pitch the first pitch of the game. They want a new ball. Back in the day, the pitchers wanted the whole beat up ball. Yeah.
The one with that Mississippi mud on it, right, Victor?
Dark Mississippi mud.
Dark Mississippi, but used to make it grayish.
Yeah. I used to rub them up pretty.
You
pretty
told
dark.
me how to rub them up in the clubhouse at Wicker Stadium.
Well, now, if you look at the balls now, they're all white. You can see how white they are. They don't rub the mud in the ball.
Nope.
They just put a little mud on it.
Yeah.
But they don't rub the ball. You got to rub the mud in. But the pitchers like them slick, I guess. I don't know. I don't get it. It's a lot of things. I love the game. I love the game. I watch a game every night, at least one game. I watch my son-in-law's game almost every night. And if he's not working that night, I'll watch another game. I'll watch whatever. But I watch at least one game, maybe 2 games a night. Sit there and watch it. And I love the game, but some of the stuff I see is like, I mean, I've seen a pitcher throw 8 straight balls. 8. Guy comes up, first pitch, he's swinging. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? You want to hit a home run? Take a pitch, for God's sake. Make him throw you a strike.
Yeah, because
ball 9.
The guy can't find it with a GPS, and you're swinging.
Absolutely. I don't know.
What was one of your favorite stadiums to call the games in, and what was one of your favorite cities to visit? Because you traveled a lot. So did you have a favorite stadium and city?
No, I got scolded when my second year by Nestor Shylock, who was a Hall of Fame umpire, probably the best umpire I've ever worked with or ever seen. And he heard us talking one day, me and another young guy in Cleveland. We were complaining about the stadium in Cleveland and he said, I don't ever want to hear you complaining about a stadium again. He said, you go out here, you do the same job. It doesn't matter what stadium you're in. You go out on the field, there's all the same dimensions. It's all the same. It's all this. If you start talking negative about a stadium when you walk out in that stadium, you're gonna have a negative attitude. You're not gonna do the job the way you're supposed to do it. And when people ask me that question, I tell them that story. So the answer to that is no. I didn't have any favorite stadiums. I didn't have any favorite fields. Did I have favorite cities? Yeah, I used to love to go to Chicago. I had a good friend of mine that owned one of the best restaurants in the country. I used to go there after game. Baltimore was another good city. We had good friends that owned Italian restaurant. Or it's just according the city to me is according where you eat,
Right,
where
exactly.
you
Now,
where you can go get a good good lunch or good dinner.
mhm.
That's some of them like New York. I didn't like to go to New York. I didn't really like to go to. It's too much of a hustle and bustle for me to get from Manhattan to the Bronx was a hassle at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon. You couldn't. The cabs would. The cabs wouldn't take you if they knew you were going. If you got a cab in Manhattan and you tell them you before you get in that cab, you tell them you're going to Yankee Stadium, they won't take you. You got to wait. You got to get in, and when he asks you where you're going, make believe you don't hear him. Wait till he gets going, and then he
Before he
gets
throws you out, right?
and then he gets and he gets mad, and you have to tell him, listen, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of you. Because what happens is they can't get a fare back. They get a fare. They get a fare from downtown to Manhattan to the Bronx. They can't find somebody that's in the Bronx that wants to come downtown. They're in the hustle bustle of Yankee Stadium. You want to get out of that traffic. You don't want to be in that traffic.
Yeah, you got to give him a ticket to the game.
So it was hard. It was difficult. Now, so when I became a supervisor, I worked as a supervisor for 8 years. I had a car service. That's better. They come pick you up. You walk out. You get in the car. They drop you at the stadium. The game over. You go out. Get in the car. Bring you back. You don't have to worry about waiting for a cab or waiting for a car or that. Well, that's the way to live in New York. You got to have a car service. So, but a lot of the cities you could, Boston, you could walk. I mean, you could walk from the ballpark to your hotel. It's not that far. Downtown area is, kind of small. But I enjoyed all the cities. I didn't mind. There was hardly any that I ever said because I had that. You got to have that frame of mind, that positive frame of mind, because you got to go there anyway. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. You got a schedule. You're going there. Did I really want to go fly from? Did I want to fly from New York to Seattle? Hell no. That's a long flight. But if it's in your schedule, you got to go. You got to do it.
So we saw the
Victor, you
portrait.
have any questions?
Go ahead, Joy.
No, I was asking you if you had any
Oh
questions
yeah,
for Richie.
I do. So we see the portrait of you and Billy Martin going face to face when you first came on. Would you rather go toe to toe with Billy Martin or with Earl Weaver?
Didn't matter. Either one of them. And they're same. They're the same. You know what you're gonna get. You know. Um, Earl Weaver. Very seldom did you get in an argument with him that you weren't gonna throw him out of the game.
Okay.
You knew that. When he started arguing, you knew that that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to get thrown out of the game, and he would make it a point for you to throw him out of the game. And that's because the league never really fined him like they should.
Okay.
But then somebody paid his fine. I think the teams paid his fine or whatever. Because these guys, once you hit them in the pocket, you hit them in the pocketbook, they won't argue much anymore. You can tell. You can tell who when they get in their pocketbook or not. If they keep arguing, that means they didn't get in their pocketbook. They get in their pocketbook, they stop. Or they become a little bit more respectful. Let's put it that way. So, Martin, Billy, only thing with Billy is when he yelled, you had to yell back. Otherwise, he eat you up. He had to know that you weren't going to take his crap. And once he knew that, he would, kind of leave you alone. But if he knew you would let him yell at you, he would yell at you the whole game. He'd yell every pitch, and they didn't like this, they didn't like that. And I used to tell the young guys, say, if he yells at you, yell back. And if you got to throw him out, throw him out. I mean, who hasn't thrown Weaver or Billy Martin out of a game.
That's
In
true.
other words, you're not going to get league president's not going to come to you and say, "Hey, how come you threw Billy Martin out of a game?" I'm one of 100. The same with Weaver. Now, you got a nice guy, and you throw him out of a game, then you got to explain why you threw him out of a game. Like Jeff Tolberg, and those guys. Jeff Tolberg was a gentleman. He was a nice guy. So you're not, if Jeff Tolberg came and wanted to talk to me about something, I would listen to it. I'd give him the benefit of the doubt. I wouldn't yell at him. Because I know he's not going to yell at me. So he came out, he talked like a gentleman. He asked a question, I gave him an answer. He didn't come out of the dugout telling me what I saw. Like Billy, he would ask, don't come out here telling me what I saw or what I didn't see, and what I did or why I did it. And that's the way, that's how they started their arguments. That's the way they did it.
And what's the worst thing anyone ever said to you, Richie, as an umpire, to get them thrown out?
Well,
If
Dick
you say it
Williams
on air.
Dick Williams was probably the worst of all the guys, of
Okay.
all the managers that I ever had to deal with.
With Oakland?
He was Oakland. He was with Oakland. He was with the Angels. He was with Seattle. So I had him quite a bit. One day I threw him out. This is my first year. And he said something like, "I'm tired of you Cubans," something like that.
Jesus.
And he didn't even, he didn't even know me. He's married to a Latin woman, right? So he just he likes to get
Yeah.
he liked to get personal. Yeah, he did. He liked to get personal. But I learned that real quick. You learn who the guys are that. I tell you a quick story about Dick Williams. I learned a lesson. They had a rain out, and he brought this young kid up to pitch. He had a doubleheader the next day. So they brought a young kid up to pitch. Well, the kid, I'm working the plate. The kid pitched 6 2/3 innings, which today he would, he'd be Cy Young Award winner.
Absolutely.
Pitching 6 2/3. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
So anyway, so the kid pitches 6 2/3 innings. So Dick Williams comes out. So I run out. I'll go out to the mound. I said, "Dick, what are you gonna do?" And he points out to the bullpen. He said, "Bring me that SOB from the bullpen." That's the way he talked. So I turn around. I look at the kid and I said, "Hey, you did a great job today." Oh my God, he went crazy. He turned around and said, "Great job, my ass. You can't pitch 9 innings in the big leagues. You shouldn't be here. He's going back to the minor leagues tomorrow." How about that? That's the kind of guy he was, right in front of the kid.
Wow.
Right in front of the kid.
Well, we have that saying in Key West: when you're born to be a nickel, you'll never be a dime. That's Dick Williams.
Yeah. So he was terrible guy. Terrible.
This has been like we can talk all day.
My
This
God,
is
you can.
been phenomenal.
so good. It's something about baseball. I forget when I'm talking about baseball that I'm 58 years old and I feel like a little 8-year-old kid again.
I knew you then.
Yeah, you did.
did.
You did. That's how I'm feeling right now, listening to this and being able to watch you on TV. Because Boog had already retired when my memories start coming about, and you'd be calling the game and run up to the TV and point and try to see you, because you couldn't pause the TV then and all that like you can now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so it's been wonderful to hear all the stories, and we'll do this anytime you want. You come
We'll
back
do it again. We can do it again. We'll do it again sometime. No problem. I just got a flash on my phone. The battery's going down.
Yeah, we better.
Hopefully next time we're gonna do it on the computer. I don't know what happened there today, so
No, I appreciated all the stories that you've shared and getting through the technical difficulties. It's been a real pleasure. Let me just ask you one more before we wrap up. What does conch pride mean to you?
It's awesome to be a conch.
It is.
And it's good when you tell somebody I was born and raised in Key West, because they asked me, where you from? I was at Key West. Wow, you're a conch? Yeah, I'm a conch. Yeah, you sure am. And proud of it.
Absolutely. You know,
we're all proud of you. And I remember when you spoke at George Maier's service, you talked about the importance of conchs learning our history. And you are such a part of the history here in Key West. So it's been a pleasure to hear your stories and to record them. And like I said, anytime you want to come back, we'll do it again. Or if you come to Key West and you just want to go get a Cuban mix and a bucci, it's on me.
All right. I remember that.
I'm Joy Newlish, and I appreciate you tuning into my podcast. My purpose is to bring joy into my life and the lives of others. If you enjoyed this episode, drop a review, share, and subscribe, because there's a lot of good stuff on tap. You can also follow Bring Joy on YouTube and Instagram, or check my website at joynewlish.com. Now go bring joy to the people in your world. Until next time, much love.